I work for Sheffield City Council, and I fear from the chat so far that there's an awful lot of things people might expect me to say. Um, but my background is in community development work, and so I got involved in food banks, I guess, when the pandemic started, and the council decided it was going to try and help provide or help food banks source food. It was a fairly top-down approach, as the council might start with, but we ended up understanding that what was on offer in the city was quite comprehensive. There's an awful lot of food banks, different styles, different approaches, and there was some notion that maybe we needed to have something of more uniform or more coherent about it. But as I got more involved in it, I realised that actually the uniqueness was actually a strength, and that we didn't need to do that at all. We needed to find ways in which people could navigate the system. And so, working with VAS and the food banks themselves, we started to look at what collaboration looked like. Where would the council best put its efforts if it was to address food poverty? For me, wasn't looking at the food growing part of it. Other parts of the council are, but about the food poverty angle. And so we ended up doing a process where we used Megan Blake's food ladder system to look at which organisations were doing catching activities, which ones were doing capacity building, and which ones were doing transforming. Not because we were suggesting that any one of them was right or wrong, but because we needed to understand where the gaps were. The mapping helped us understand that the system was that complicated that actually those of us working in it didn't understand it, and therefore those people who were newly in need of those support also were going to struggle to understand where they should go realistically. How would you know where your nearest food bank was, and whether it's the right one for you or the wrong one for you? And what sort of extra support did they have? What was the difference between what you might get from FoodWorks and what you might get from S2 Food Bank? And so this led us eventually to creating a food poverty working group from the scrutiny committee, by which point they went out and asked for people for evidence for them to consider. And they ended up with an understanding that cash first was an issue for them, was a focus for what the council ought to be thinking about. However, what they also recognised was something which probably everybody here realises, which is that the council doesn't understand where food poverty sits in its remit at the moment. So there are various officers working on it from different parts of the council. There are various councillors interested in it, but there isn't as yet a very clear leadership role. So one of the key outcomes of the food poverty working group was that the council needs to work that out for itself, but also work out its role within the broader picture, because it's not just for the council to lead on, as many people have said today. All of this kind of is coming to a head a little bit with the notion of the financial cliff edge that has been talked about at the City Partnership Board and ably led or inputted by people like Debbie. And Debbie's thing about poverty being structural, I think, is beginning to hit home. What it does mean, though, is that for councillors who are working on a very short time scale, often too short for some of us, they need actions that they can see. How do I do X, Y, and Z? And so, rather than looking at where the end point of the journey is, what's the next step in that journey? And I think that today's event is helping with this, because what it's shown is the vast array of knowledge in the city already, and that actually, if we can make this complicated system somehow more legible to all of us, and work out, as the chat's been saying, work out what the next steps are, then there are some opportunities. I don't know if the current political situation is going to help us or not help us. It's certainly going to make things change a bit, but there's always opportunity in that. I think that, as Renee has said, the notions around mutual aid and how we are moving towards a more neighbourhood-based approach to lots of the council's services. That's also helpful. But I think that we will have to remain vigilant that actually we take everybody with us, and not just those that are already empowered, those that already understand the options in front of them, but a full gamut of people. And at the moment, as we slightly have demonstrated today, we're not representative of our whole city, and we're certainly not representative of those people who are most suffering from food poverty.